Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So I really want to take this time to thank you all for joining this morning. We're going to talk a little bit about the data verification process. And this is a process that we will need all providers to complete in order to verify that the data that we have in our records is consistent and accurate with the data that you guys have on your end. And that will help us ensure that we have accurate data that we're going to be able to use for the performance profiles and the quality ratings. So can everybody see my screen? If you want to respond in the chat box. Okay. Okay, great. So this is what it's going to look like. I'm going to be sending out emails to deans and directors initially with their usernames. And once you get your username, you'll also, there in the email, there will be a link to the teacher preparation data verification portal. So it looks like this. And you'll use the username that I send you in an email, and you will type it in just like you do for every other thing that you have a username for. You will also be able to set your own password. And so there will be steps to do that in the email that I send. And so once you have your username and you create a password, you will just log in. All right. So once you log into the system, the very first screen that you're going to see right off the bat is the dashboard. So what I've got here is just some sample data to show you. So right now, this is just a sample provider, but up here will be your institution's name. And there will also be a number, but you don't have to worry about the number. It's not important for you to remember, but each institution will have a number in this system. So the first screen you see is this dashboard. And the dashboard is a really useful way to see the status of all of your submissions on one page. So you can see here that we have different statuses. It'll tell you how many total records are in your roster. It'll tell you how many are not submitted, which means you've made changes, but you haven't submitted those changes yet. And one of the important things to remember that we'll talk about is you can make changes and save those changes, but you have to submit them as a separate step. So if you have changes that you've made, but you've not yet submitted them to us, that will be indicated here. It'll tell you how many records fall into that category. There's also a category for submitted or pending review. So that these are changes that you have submitted to us and that haven't been reviewed yet, but they are sort of in our queue. And then you have changes that have been submitted but are under review currently. And then there are how many records you submitted that are closed. So those are either approved or rejected changes. So this just allows you to see all in one place, sort of just a summary of your records. And with all of the rosters and everything in this system, you can always export them to Excel with this button. It may not really make sense for you to export this particular page, but you can if you want. You'll also see down here announcements. So this is something that I can post announcements, and when you log in, you'll be able to see any announcements that I post. they'll be down here. And so you can look at those. One of the things I'm going to post when we open the portal is a guide, a document that helps you understand how to use the system. So that will be in the system once you log in. You'll see an announcement there with that guide. Okay, so do we have any questions so far? Okay, great. So we'll go on, and I just want to give you kind of an overview of all of the steps that you'll need to take to complete the data verification process, and then we'll go through each one. So there's really 5 main steps. Step 1 is going to be you log in and you will review the data in the system, and you'll just check to see whether it's consistent with your records. Step 2 is going to be if there are discrepancies between the data in the system and the data in your records, you'll need to modify the data in the online portal so that it is accurate. So once you've done that, step 3 is then to submit those changes, and then we will receive those changes. So step 4 is we will review your submission. We will ask you for any additional information. So one of the things that we'll talk about in a few minutes is if you're changing certain fields, you will need to submit documentation for that. And so we may ask you to submit additional documentation. And then the final step, step 5, is we will approve your submission, and then we will upload your final roster. So once we receive all of your changes and we approve all of them, then we will upload to the system your final roster. We will add a few things to that. We will add the program completer effectiveness and employment data, and that way you will have that roster that you can download for your record, and you can use that for your own program improvement efforts. Okay, so the first step, and again, this is all in the guide that I believe it was linked in the Believe and Prepare newsletter, but I will also put it on the portal when it opens on Monday. So step 1 is to just review the data that's in the system. So when you log in, you'll see this screen, the dashboard. That's the default page for when you log in. So to review your roster, you're going to come up here to the Program Provider menu. And when you hover your mouse, you'll get a drop-down menu. And you'll come down and go to Rosters. And then you'll see this Program Completer roster out to the side here, and you want to click that. So this will bring up a page with a roster. So I have sample data in here. So you can see that this, instead of saying sample provider, this will say whatever your institution's name is, and it'll show your code. Again, don't worry about the number. That's just the code that's assigned in this system. So you'll see, you can sort of scroll over, and you'll see last name, first name, all of the fields for every program completer, graduation year, SSN, all the way over. And so there's a lot of different fields that you can look at and modify if you need to modify. And we'll go into that in just a second. So if you want to search, you can search for a specific program completer. You can use this box right here to search by name. Right? So if I want to search for Cindy Smith, I can type in Cindy. And now I have found just Cindy Smith's record here, and I can look at her data. You can also filter in various ways. By the way, once you have filtered or searched and you want to show all records again, you just click this Show All button right here, and then that will bring back all of the other records. So you can filter by submission ID. Now that's not relevant right now for what I've done so far because I haven't submitted anything. But once I've submitted records, this will be able to be filtered. And I can also filter by status, meaning if I have some changes that I've made, but I haven't submitted them yet, I can search for all of the ones that I haven't submitted. So I'll click this drop down next to status, and I want to search for not submitted draft. And so I can click search, and then that will bring up all of the records that I have modified but not submitted to the department yet, because maybe there's still some changes I want to make later. Okay, so I'm going to click show all to bring all of these back. Okay. So once you've looked at the data in this system and you've identified any changes that you want to make, you'll need to then go in and modify the records. So in this view, you want to find the records that you want to modify. And let's say I want to modify Cindy Smith. So Cindy Smith is right here, and I will go to her record, and I will come over to the very left side, and there's a link that says View. So I will click on View, and this will bring up a window with a bunch of fields that have been filled out, and you can edit these fields to make them accurate if you feel like they need to be changed. So I can change first name, last name, graduation year, I can change the SSN, I can change gender, race. If anything is inaccurate in the system, you can change those things. So notice that there are asterisks next to some of these fields. And down here, we have the explanation for the asterisk, which is if it has an asterisk next to it, that just means that if you change that value, that requires you to upload some kind of supporting documentation to justify that change. So graduation year would require supporting documentation. The pathway type would. And in the guide, we've outlined the kind of documentation that you'll need to upload for each different field. So if you're changing the pathway type, you'll need to upload a program completion certificate showing the type of pathway completed. And all of this is outlined in the guide. So you'll have that there, and you know what documents you will need to upload. All right, so we can scroll down even further here. We'll just see even more information about each program completer. You have certification information down here. So you can add up to 3 certification areas if that applies. It probably won't apply for most program completers. They probably just have 1, possibly 2. But you can add certification areas. If you do, that will also require you to upload a program completion document showing the certification areas or an application for certification that shows those certification areas. And you can also, down toward the bottom, edit the residency information. So if they have a site that they've been placed and you want to edit that or add a site, For the residency, you can do that down here. If you change the LEA name or the site name, then you'll just need to upload a document from the school or the school system on official letterhead signed by an employee of the LEA or district that verifies that the program completer completed their residency at that site. Okay, so the next thing is, well, how do you upload that documentation? So you're in this window, you're editing a program completer's data, and now you want to upload a document to justify the change. So what you'll do is you'll come over to this tab on the right, Description and Support Documents. You'll click that, and you can write a description in this box as to what change you're making and why. And then down here, you can upload any documents that you need. So you can hit Select, and that'll bring up your Windows Explorer where you can see all your files and you can upload whatever you need to there. So once I change something in this system, I'm going to want to click on the Save button to make sure that those changes are saved. But it's really important to remember that once you have saved your changes, that does not mean that they have been submitted to the department yet. So they're just saved, but only you can see them until you actually submit the record for review. Okay, so I'm going to go in and I'm just going to change something. I'm going to go in and change the pathway type. Maybe it was entered incorrectly and it's entered as post-baccalaureate when it should be undergraduate. So for this, I'll click Save. And it'll tell me that it saved successfully. Okay. And then I can click Close, and it will take me back to my roster. Now, so if you'll notice, I didn't upload any supporting documentation, and that was a field that required supporting documentation. So what it's going to tell me here is I have this little message in red that says missing an attachment. So whenever you log in, and you look at your roster and there's missing attachments, you'll see that here under status. So that allows you to easily see which program completers you need to still upload attachments for. So once you have made changes and you feel like those changes are ready to submit to the department, we have this button here. There's two of the same buttons, one up here and there's one down here, the same button. And you'll submit all eligible records for review. So once you click that, that means that all the records that have all of the documentation uploaded will be submitted. So you can submit multiple times, right? So you don't have to, you can submit a batch of changes, and then if you still have several days before the portal closes on February 14th, you can go back into the system later, make more changes, and then submit those changes again. So you can submit multiple batches of changes. You don't have to do it all at once, but you certainly can. It's up to you. Okay. So if you need to add a record, let's say that there's a program completer that you have in your records that for some reason isn't in our data here, you don't see it, you can add somebody new. And there's a button for that right here. So it says Add Record, and you'll just want to click Add Record, and that'll bring up a similar window to what we saw before, but it will be blank. And so you'll need to fill in the proper blanks. So you'll need to fill in the last name, the first name. This might already be on Mike. And you'll fill out all of the fields that you need to fill out. So let's see, if I don't fill out every field that I need to fill out, it will give me a message that says saving failed, invalid, and/or missing entry. So that just means you need to fill out all the required fields. Okay. So we will close out that. The next step is if you have somebody that you need to remove, maybe they're on this roster and they shouldn't be for one reason or another. So we've modified, we've added, and now if we need to remove somebody, how do we do that? So if I want to remove somebody that should not be on this list, I can find their name. Let's say I want to remove Susie. Maybe she shouldn't have been on this roster. So I can go to her record. I can click view, just like I did to modify it. But instead of modifying it down here, there's at the top, it says flag for removal. And I can click yes, flag for removal. So what that will do is that will lock all of these fields here so that I can no longer edit them. And then I'm going to click save. And then that will flag for removal. So when you submit those changes to the department, we will see that you want that record to be removed. And even here, when you come back to the roster view, you can see now that I flagged it for removal, it has a little red bar. It says removed. And also notice that the status here is eligible for submission, meaning this can be submitted. It doesn't require any additional documentation to be uploaded. Everything is good to go to submit to the department. And so if I were to want to submit that, I would just click submit all eligible records. And since that one is eligible, that would go and submit. So once I click submit all eligible records, it'll ask me, are you sure? Are you ready to submit all eligible records? And I'll click continue. And it will tell me that that has been submitted. So once you do that, the status will then change to submitted/pending review. So now you know that that record has been submitted and that it's in the department queue and that we haven't looked at it yet, but it's pending review. Okay, so the next part of this is once you've submitted your records, if you want to view all of the records that you have submitted, then you'll want to go to the data certification submission page. So you'll come back up to this program provider menu here, and you'll go down to data certification submissions. And you'll click on that. So now I have a list of all of the records that I've submitted. So in this case today, I've just submitted only one. So that's what you see here is the one that I just submitted. And it will tell me what the submission ID is. So every time you submit a batch of records, that batch of records will get an ID. Not incredibly important to know or remember or anything, but it will tell you. So if my provider number is 9999, my first submission will be 9999.1, the second submission 9999.2, and so on. So this tells me that these records that I submitted, they're pending review, and in this case, this is only one record. It's pending review. Claimant just means who from the department has looked at it and reviewed it. nobody has yet, so that's blank. They'll tell you who submitted it, which that'll be you. But if you if someone else from your institution has submitted it, if you have multiple people at your institution working in here, it'll tell you who submitted that. And then it'll give you the time that you submitted it. And then here we see awaiting response. So if there are additional documents that you need to upload, we will send you what's called a response to your submission. And we will ask you for that additional documentation. And so you'll see awaiting response from provider. It'll show 1 or however many messages we've sent. So if you log in and you go to the data certification submission page and you see that there's anything other than a 0 in awaiting response from provider, then you're going to want to check your messages, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second, to see what we've asked you to modify or add to the record that you've submitted. Okay. So let me go back for 1 second. Okay. So let's say that I want to look further into this submission and I want to see those specific records that I submitted. I will click on this submission ID over here on the left side. And that will show me this record that I just submitted, Susie Doe. I can view her record. So I submitted this record for removal. So we can see that the fields are locked because it has been submitted for removal. If you have made changes to any of the fields, you can come to this tab in the middle that says Modified Fields. And that will show you all of the fields that you have changed. So in this case, I haven't changed any fields, so nothing is in here. And I can go back in just a second and we can look at one that does have records or that has fields. But in this column here, you'll see all of the data fields. You'll see what their original value was, and then you'll see over here in the third column under requested value what you changed it to. So if you have a response from the department, it will be over here on this third tab on the right side. So you'll click responses. If you have a message from the department, you will see in this box that says responses, you'll see a little message and it will say, please submit documentation for this change. And you can reply by clicking in this box that says new response. And I'll just put in a response that says test. And then you can upload any documents that you need to upload using this button right here. And then I can post a response to the department. And I'll just click post. And you see my message has been posted here. And that way the department can see it. One of the things that you'll also want to do is if you have a message from the department, you can acknowledge that you've read it by clicking this Acknowledge Responses button. And that will just let us know that you have seen that and that you're working on getting a response to the message or uploading documentation. Okay. So I just want to go back and let's see. Let's go to data certification. Let's go to rosters. Okay. I'm going to go and change another field. I'm going to change a field that maybe it was entered incorrectly. Maybe the gender was wrong and it was entered incorrectly. So that does not require documentation, but I'm going to change that and I'm going to submit that, or I'm sorry, save that. Okay, and I'm going to close, and then I'm going to submit. Oh, looks like it was not eligible for submission. Let's see what did I do. Let's try. Okay, there we go. So I've just made a change that doesn't require any documentation. I'm going to submit that change. Okay, so then I want to come back to see all of my submissions, and I'm going to go to the program provider menu, go down to data certification submissions, and I'll see the second submission here under 9999.2. I'll click on that, and I'll see the record for Amanda Doe. I'll view, and now I should be able to see all of the fields that I modified. So in this case, the field is gender. The original value was F, and I changed it to M. So I just wanted to show you an example of what that would look like. And so for every field you've modified, it will show you what the original value was and what you changed it to. Okay. So once you have submitted your records, you've read any responses from the department and submitted all of your documentation, and everything looks good to go from our end, we will go ahead and we will approve your submissions. And once we do that, you will have we will upload your final roster to the Louisiana data review system here, and you will be able to log in and access your final roster. So to do that, you're going to go back up to this program provider menu. You're going to go to rosters and program completer roster again, like we've done before. And you'll be able to see your final roster in here with all the corrections that you've made. And then you can export that to Excel. And that way you will have your final roster to use for your own research and program improvement purposes. Another thing I just wanted to mention is when the department sends you a response to your submission, you will receive an email about that. So you don't have to keep continually logging in to wonder if we responded. You should be getting an email alert that tells you, hey, there's a response and we need additional documentation. So you can easily access it that way. So those are the main functions that you'll need to use to be able to complete the data verification process. Are there any questions about any part of the process that I've gone over today? Okay, I'm hearing none. So remember, I'll give you one more second. I know sometimes it's easy to forget you're on mute. So if you have questions, feel free to ask. those questions now. If you have questions later on while you're using the system, feel free to email me. I'm going to put my email address in this chat box now, but you'll also be getting regular emails from me regarding this process. And I also have individual technical assistance appointments available. And so I sent out an email with information about that. I believe that is also in the Believe and Prepare newsletter. So there's just a link to a Doodle poll, and you can go in and sign up for an appointment there. And then I will contact you, and we will set up a call to talk about any additional questions that you might have about this system. So I think that's about it. If no one has any other questions or comments, then I'll go ahead and end the webinar. I appreciate you all for joining. Thank you very, very much, and continue to let me know if you have any questions at all. You can always email me, and I will get back to you. All right, so thank you. And if we haven't seen you yet, we will look forward to seeing you at the January provider meetings that are coming next week. Okay, thanks everyone. Bye-bye.